Watchmen is one of my favorite comic book movies. I've seen it a dozen times, watched all the behind the scenes footage, and spent way too much time reading articles, forum threads, and watching videos about it. That's why I was surprised when I heard there was actually a video game, Watchmen The End is Nigh. I spent the last decade not even knowing of this game's existence. I never encountered anyone mention it, and it really seemed to fly under everybody's radar. Part 1 has video reviews by a few major gaming outlets like IGN, GameSpot, and The Escapist, as well as from a few small YouTube channels, but Part 2 seemed to be ignored by mostly everyone. So,
kill yourself.
What is this game? This was a digital download game released on PC, PS3, and Xbox 360. It was released in 2 parts, and according to the wiki, Warner Bros. Did this on purpose. Part 1 would release alongside the movie in March 2009, and then Part 2 would release 4 months later, around the same time the movie dropped on DVD and Blu-ray. My guess is this was to help maximize the amount of sales and help build hype, but it went largely unnoticed. And when Part 2 dropped digitally in July, they also put both parts together on one disc and released it at the same time. Xbox got The End is Nigh Part 1 and 2, which has one of the ugliest box arts I've ever seen, and PS3 got the complete experience, which not only had a better cover, but also came with the director's cut of the movie. This is the first time I've ever seen a video game and a movie bundled together like this. I opted to just download it on Steam since it was a much cheaper and easier method. Warner Bros. Published it while Deadline Games worked on the development, which is a very fitting name for the studio because not long after completing The End is Nigh, they filed for bankruptcy. The studio developed some pretty unremarkable games, most of which I never heard of, so the studio was relatively unknown. But they actually had Dave Gibbons, illustrator on the original Watchmen comic, on the project to be an advisor, and the game's story was co-written by Len Wein, the co-creator of Swamp Thing and X-Men's Wolverine, Nightcrawler, Storm, and Colossus. But more importantly, he also worked on Watchmen as the editor with Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons. Also, both Patrick Wilson and Jackie Earle Haley, who played Night Owl and Rorschach in the movie, lend their voices for the characters here. Fun fact, Jackie Earle Haley would then go on to play Ruvik in 2014's The Evil Within. Just found that out and went to tell someone.
Nobody cares.
So it's all pretty cool that they were able to get people who were involved in the creation of the comic and the movie. Honestly, learning about the development of the game and the people behind it is way more interesting than the game itself. Even though all this information is neat, it doesn't change the fact that the final product is average at best. Alright, let's talk about the actual game now.
Don't care.
The End is Nigh is a basic beat 'em up. You play as either Rorschach or Night Owl, and each plays a bit differently from each other. Rorschach is quicker and can use weapons he finds on the ground, but his punches are wild haymakers and his combos are simple. Night Owl is better trained in hand-to-hand combat and can use gadgets to aid him in a fight. Both feature a bar underneath their health, a rage meter for Rorschach and a charge meter for Night Owl. And when full, it will increase your damage and speed for a short amount of time for Rorschach, and for Night Owl, his suit will let out an electrical charge, hitting all enemies. And though they do have slight differences in their fight styles, they don't feel all that different. You will hit different button combinations to do combos, and they have their own finish animations, but other than that, they play exactly the same. The game takes place before the events of Watchmen. Part 1 takes place in 1972, and the story goes, Night Owl and Rorschach must look for an underboss who escaped prison during a riot. And Part 2 takes place in 1977, and Rorschach and Night Owl are looking for a missing girl who was kidnapped by the Twilight Lady. There are a few things that I like that I want to briefly mention here. First off, the cutscenes are done in a comic book style similar to the motion comic that came out the same year. It's a nice touch and it looks good. The voice acting from Patrick Wilson and Jackie Earle Haley are both good and I like their inclusion. And Part 1 has an interesting story that ties into the real-world Watergate scandal. On their hunt for underboss, Night Owl and Rorschach get information that the 2 reporters responsible for exposing Watergate are targeted before they can release the information leading to Nixon's impeachment. But they can't get to him in time, and it's revealed that the comedian killed them. I like this because Watchmen takes real-world events and alters them, so something like this fits right into the Watchmen world. That's basically all the stuff I liked. The gameplay is very simple, which isn't a bad thing, but it gets old fast. The basic mechanics are as follows: light attack, heavy attack, dodge/block, and throw. You are given a list of combos you can perform by landing successful hits, and when enemies are hurt enough, you can perform finishers. And everything works fine, but it really doesn't take long for things to get repetitive and boring. This is due in large part to not only the combat being very simple, but also the lack of enemy variety. There are going to be 3 types of enemies you're going to fight. You're going to be small and fast, big and slow, and then normal. Even though you travel to different parts of the city, from a prison to street alleys, nightclubs, and brothels, the enemies will look different in each area, but will all fight the same. The prisoners will fight the same as the bikers, who fight the same as the underboss's henchmen, who fight the same way as the clubgoers. A short and fast prisoner is going to act the same exact way as a short and fast gang member. And in each area, you're going to see dozens of clones of the same enemy. And they come at you in waves, and after you knock out the 50th biker in the same way you knocked out the first biker, you start to lose interest. And you only got a few different knockout animations, so you get tired of seeing the same 2 or 3 over and over again. It all quickly becomes repetitive. It doesn't help there's no bosses or mini bosses to help break up the flow, except for the bosses at the end of each part. Which, by the way, these boss fights are hilariously notoriously bad. There's no strategy, just fight them the same way you would fight any other enemy. You just do it longer because they have a massive health bar and they do more damage. All these critiques apply to both Part 1 and 2. They both play exactly the same way, and the only difference about them is the story and the length. You figure since Part 2 came out 4 months after the first one that it would give them time to improve on things, but they didn't. Guess you can't be too mad at them, they were filing for bankruptcy. There's no difficulty level, so there's no way to really challenge yourself after you master the controls and combos. The only real challenge is from the amount of enemies they throw at you. There is split screen co-op, but I can't speak on that because I didn't try it, because I don't have any friends. The soundtrack is dull. You get the same 2 music tracks that play while you're in combat. If the repetitive gameplay doesn't put you to sleep, the music definitely will. Graphically, it looks fine for a 2009 game developed to be sold as a short digital download. I also never experienced any freezing or shitty frame rate. During the comic cutscenes, the voice acting is fine, but in-game you're going to hear the same few lines from every enemy. They all say the same shit and it gets old. The best way I can describe this game is everything is average but gets old fast. This isn't a long game either. You can beat both parts in roughly 4 to 5 hours. That's a testament to how quickly this game gets repetitive. After the first hour, you have everything down packed. After that, the only thing left to do is pick up these cards that increase your rage meter and also teach you new combos. In the end, it was a very forgettable experience. I like that Part 1 alters history to fit into the Watchmen world, and I like that Part 2 takes place during the police strike and passing of the Keene Act. But everything else was just unbelievably bland, average, and dull. It didn't blow my mind like I hoped.
Lick my balls.